The rain in Sector 4 did not wash things clean. It only made the grime slicker, turning the neon-drenched streets into a kaleidoscope of oil, trash, and despair. The water tasted metallic, like chewing on a 9-volt battery, a sensation Eli had grown accustomed to over 30 years of breathing the recycled, smog-heavy air of New Los Angeles. He adjusted the collar of his synthetic leather jacket, trying to keep the acidic drizzle off his neck. It was a futile gesture. The dampness had settled into his bones long ago, a constant aching reminder of old shrapnel wounds and cheaper surgeries. He checked his wrist chrono. 2,300 hours. He was late, but he could not bring himself to walk any faster. The package in his pocket, a bio-encrypted data drive the size of a fingernail, felt heavy. It contained blackmail material for a mid-level councilman, proof of illicit trade deals with the off-world colonies. Eli did not know the details, and he did not care. He was a courier, a ghost, a disposable asset in a city that burned through people faster than it burned through uranium fuel cells. He kept his head down, navigating the labyrinth of the lower levels. Above him, the arcologies of the elite pierced the smog layer, gleaming towers of glass and white composite material where the air was scrubbed scentless and the sun was simulated to shine for 12 hours a day. Down here, in the shadows of the megastructures, it was always night. Rumors had been circulating in the courier underground for weeks. The street rats whispered about night demons and star eaters. They claimed that the new curfew laws were not about crime control but about cattle management. Eli had dismissed it as chem-fried paranoia. Humanity had been trading with the alien visitors, the Kylori, for a decade. The trade was supposed to be technology for resources. The government said it was a golden age. Eli stepped over a puddle reflecting a flickering hologram of a smiling politician. He spat into the water, distorting the face. If this was a golden age, he wondered why he felt so tired. It was not just the physical exhaustion of walking 10 miles a day or the lingering pain in his bad knee. It was a spiritual fatigue. A deep, hollow sensation in his chest that suggested nothing he did mattered. If he died tonight, the city would not blink. His landlord would rent his hab unit before his body was cold. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it gave him a grim, dark comfort. He turned into an alleyway, a shortcut that would shave 10 minutes off his trek to the drop point. The narrow passage smelled of ozone and rotting synthetic protein. A drone buzzed overhead, its red eye sweeping the debris, but Eli knew the blind spots. He pressed himself against a rusted ventilation shaft, waiting for the machine to pass. When the drone whirred away, Eli stepped back out. That was when the shadows detached themselves from the walls. They moved with a fluidity that no street thug possessed. There were 4 of them, clad in matte black armor that drank the meager light of the alley. No gang colors, no shouting, just professional synchronized silence. Eli's military training, dormant but not dead, flared in his brain. He dropped his center of gravity, reaching for the stun baton concealed in his sleeve. "Drop the package," a synthesized voice commanded from behind a sleek, featureless faceplate. Eli let out a dry, rasping laugh. "You boys are working late," he said. "You realize I do not get paid enough to fight for this, right?" He made a show of reaching for the drive, moving slowly. Then, with a burst of desperate speed, he lunged for the gap between the 2 leaders. He did not care about the data. He just wanted to feel something other than the gray numbness of his existence. He wanted the adrenaline. He made it 2 steps. A sharp hiss cut through the rain. Something stung his neck, right above the collar. Eli stumbled, his legs turned to water instantly. He slammed into the wet pavement, his cheek pressing against the grime. He tried to push himself up, but his arms refused to acknowledge the command. A neurotoxin, fast-acting, expensive. Boots crunched on the gravel near his face. He rolled his eyes, his vision blurring at the edges. Through the haze, he saw one of the armored figures kneel. The figure removed its helmet. It was not a human face. The skin was a translucent gray, pulled tight over sharp, angular cheekbones. The eyes were too large, solid black orbs that reflected the neon signs above. It spoke, not to Eli, but to someone over a comms link. The language was a series of clicking, melodic trills, like a bird trapped in a machine. Then, a human voice answered from the figure's earpiece, loud enough for Eli to hear in the quiet alley. "Is the specimen viable?" the voice asked. It sounded bored, corporate, like a manager asking about a shipment of office supplies. "Prime condition," the alien replied in perfect, unaccented English, "high resilience markers. He will suffice for the ceremony." Eli tried to speak, to curse them, to ask what ceremony, but his tongue was a dead weight in his mouth. "Load him," the alien ordered the others. "The matriarch is waiting." Rough hands grabbed Eli by the tactical vest. He was hoisted into the air and thrown into the back of a hovering transport that had descended silently from the smog. The interior smelled of antiseptic and cold metal. As the darkness of the paralysis took his sight, Eli had one final coherent thought. So the rumors were true. We are not trading partners. We are lunch. Consciousness returned in waves of nausea. Eli blinked, his eyes stinging under harsh clinical white lights. The smell of the alley was gone, replaced by the scent of copper and ozone. He was upright, suspended in a gravity field, his arms and legs spread-eagled and held in place by humming blue energy shackles. He looked around, and the breath froze in his lungs. He was in a processing facility. It looked like a cross between a high-end hospital and a slaughterhouse. To his left and right, stretching down a long, curved corridor, were hundreds of transparent pods. Inside each pod was a human. Some were asleep, some were awake, pounding silently against the glass. Attached to each pod were sleek white machines stamped with two logos. One was the emblem of the United Earth government. The other was a stylized, sharp-edged glyph he recognized from the news feeds. The House of Vilos, one of the alien noble families. Tubes ran from the machines into the arms and necks of the people in the pods. Dark red fluid cycled through clear piping, being filtered, refined, and stored in glowing canisters. They were milking them. Eli felt a surge of bile. This was not just a few missing people. This was industrial. This was a farm. A door hissed open at the far end of the chamber. Two figures approached. One was a human male in a sharp gray suit, checking a holographic tablet. The other was a creature that made the soldiers in the alley look like children. She was tall, easily 7 feet, with skin the color of moonlight on snow. She wore robes of shifting, iridescent fabric that seemed to be woven from oil and silk. Intricate bioluminescent jewelry was grafted directly into her collarbone and forearms, pulsing with a soft violet rhythm. Her hair was a cascade of silver filaments that floated slightly, as if immune to gravity. This was Lysara of House Vilos. Even in his terrified state, Eli could see she was breathtaking. It was a terrifying, predatory beauty, designed by evolution to lure prey into the dark. Her eyes were the most striking feature, fractal irises that spun slowly like mesmerizing kaleidoscopes, shattering the light into fragments of purple and gold. But she did not look happy. She looked like she was marching to her own execution. Behind her trailed a retinue of floating cameras and drones buzzing like angry wasps. "This is the one?" Lysara asked. Her voice was melodic, carrying a strange resonance that vibrated in Eli's chest. It sounded like a cello played in an empty cathedral. "Yes, Lady Lysara," the human in the suit said, bowing slightly. "A courier, no family, no registered next of kin, a zero-sum citizen. Perfect for the integration ritual." Lysara stopped in front of Eli. She looked him up and down, her fractal eyes narrowing. She did not look at him with hunger. She looked at him with pity. "He is conscious," she noted. "Is that necessary, Director?" "The cameras require it," the director said, tapping his tablet. "The treaty renewal ceremony is being broadcast live to the High Council and the Earth Senate. They need to see the vitality of the offering. It symbolizes the living energy humanity freely gives to our protectors." Freely. Eli managed to croak. His throat felt like sandpaper. "You paralyzed me and kidnapped me. That is not exactly the definition of free will, pal." The director looked at Eli with mild annoyance, as if a piece of furniture had started talking. "Silence the subject." The director ordered a drone. "No," Lysara said sharply. She raised a hand. Her long, obsidian-tipped fingers splayed. "Let him speak. If I am to consume his life, I will not deny him his last words. It is undignified." She turned her gaze back to Eli. The cameras circled them, capturing every angle. "I apologize for this," she said softly, stepping closer. The scent of her was overwhelming, like winter air and crushed violets. "This is not my choice." Eli looked at her. He saw the tension in her jaw, the way her hands were clenched at her sides. She was a monster, yes, a predator. But she was also a pawn, just like him. Just another asset being moved around a board by old men in suits and alien matriarchs. He let out a short, jagged laugh. "Don't sweat it, sweetheart," Eli rasped, flashing a grin that showed his blood-stained teeth. "I was running out of retirement plans anyway. At least I make a pretty garnish for your political dinner party." Lysara blinked, taken aback. The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You have spirit," she said. "It is a waste." "Lady Lysara," the director hissed, pointing to the chrono on the wall. "The transmission is live. The High Matriarch is watching. Perform the rite of binding. Now." The pressure in the room spiked. The alien guards stepped forward, their weapons humming. Lysara stiffened. She looked at the cameras, then at the director, and finally back at Eli. She had no way out. Neither did he. Closing her eyes for a brief second, she composed herself. The ancient predatory instinct took over. Her posture changed. She leaned in, her movements blurring with supernatural speed. Her lips parted, revealing two needle-thin, retractable fangs that glistened with a clear venom. Eli felt his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. The end of the road. No more rain. No more bad knees. No more emptiness. Lysara placed one hand on his chest, her touch freezing cold. She leaned close to his ear. "Forgive me," she whispered. Then, she sank her fangs into the side of his neck. Eli clenched his teeth, expecting searing pain. It was there, sharp and hot, but it was immediately followed by a rush of cold endorphins. He felt his blood leaving him, a rhythmic pull that synced with the pulsing of the lights in the room. He stared up at the ceiling tiles. I was about to die, he thought, the narrative of his life narrowing down to this single absurd moment. The alien vampire girl sank her fangs into my neck. So this is it. And then the world broke. It did not fade to black. It shattered. A deafening screech of feedback tore through Eli's skull. It was not a sound. It was a sensation, like someone had poured liquid nitrogen directly onto his brainstem. Lysara gasped, her fangs still locked in his neck. She tried to pull away, but she was frozen. Her body went rigid, vibrating with the same invisible energy that was tearing Eli apart. Eli saw symbols flashing behind his eyelids, fractal geometry, military encryption codes, alien star charts, and memories that were not his own. He saw a purple sun rising over a city of black glass. He saw himself in a mirror, looking 30 years younger. He felt a hunger that could swallow a star. Error, a voice screamed in his mind. Bioincompatibility detected. Nanophage activation. Neural bridge established. The machine attached to the pod exploded in a shower of sparks. The director shouted something, but the sound was warped, slow and deep like a recording played at half speed. Eli felt his heart give one last, titanic thud. Then it stopped. The cold rushed in, absolute and total. He felt himself falling, sliding down a long, dark tunnel, stripped of his body, his weight, his name. I am dead, he thought. This is hell. It is darker than I expected. But the darkness was not empty. He blinked. Or, he thought he blinked. Vision returned, but it was wrong. Everything was wrong. The angle was too high. The colors were too vivid, shifting into spectra he had never seen before. Heat signatures, ultraviolet trails, the electromagnetic hum of the lighting fixtures visible as swirling smoke. He looked down. He expected to see his own chest, his worn leather jacket, the blood. Instead, he saw pale, luminous skin. He saw a dress of iridescent silk. He saw delicate hands with obsidian-tipped claws clutching a throat, his throat. He was looking at his own body. Eli's corpse hung in the energy shackles. Head lolled back, eyes wide and glassy, a trickle of blood running from the puncture wounds on the neck. The face was slack, the spark gone. Panic, raw and primal, exploded in his chest. But it was not his chest. He could feel two heartbeats. One was a slow, terrified thudding. The other was a rapid, fluttering rhythm that felt like a hummingbird trapped in a cage. He tried to scream. What the hell is happening? He shouted in his mind. A voice answered him. It was not a spoken voice. It was a thought, loud and terrified, echoing inside the skull he now seemed to inhabit. "Get out!" the voice screamed. "Get out of my head!" Eli reeled back, staggering on legs that felt too long, too powerful. He raised his hands, her hands, and clutched at his face. He could feel the texture of the skin, the cold smoothness of the bio-jewelry. He looked around the room. The director was staring at him, at her with horror. The drones were circling wildly. I am inside her, Eli realized, the thought crashing into him with the force of a freight train. I am in the vampire. He looked back at his own dead body hanging in the restraints. Well, Eli thought, a hysterical bubble of laughter rising in a throat that wasn't his. That is one way to quit a job. Lysara, or the body that belonged to her, doubled over, retching dryly. Silence, her mind commanded, a wave of psychic force slamming into him. You are dead. You are supposed to be dead. Apparently, Eli projected back, his thoughts messy and loud. I am haunting you. Nice dress. By the way, the world tilted as Lysara's knees gave out, and they hit the floor together, two souls screaming in one body, while the cameras broadcast their breakdown to the entire galaxy. The applause sounded like rain falling on a tin roof, distant and meaningless. Lysara stumbled away from the feeding pod, her hand clutching her throat. Her chest heaved, not with the satisfaction of the feed, but with a violent, rhythmic shuddering that felt less like digestion and more like an electrical short circuit. Splendid, the director said, clapping his hands. The transmission is cutting now, a historic moment for Earth and the Kylori High Council. Lysara did not answer. She could not answer. Her tongue felt swollen, heavy, and entirely alien in her mouth. She pushed past the hovering camera drones, her silk robes rustling like dry leaves. Every step sent a jolt of vertigo through her skull, a sensation of falling while standing perfectly still. "Where are we going?" a voice demanded. It was not a sound. It was a thought, rough and jagged, scraping against the inside of her parietal lobe like a rusted knife. Lysara gasped, grabbing the edge of a chrome console to steady herself. "I asked you a question. Bloodsucker." The voice barked again. "Why is the floor moving, and why can I smell colors?" Lysara shoved herself off the console, ignoring the concerned look of her alien handler, and practically ran toward the exit. She needed silence. She needed the dark. She needed to vomit, though her physiology made such a thing nearly impossible. She burst into the corridor, her retinal display flashing red warning icons. Her heart rate was double its resting rhythm. Her bio-jewelry pulsed with erratic, frantic light, mirroring her internal chaos. "Hey, slow down," the voice in her head complained. "My legs do not work like this. You are too tall. The center of gravity is all wrong." Lysara reached the lift and slammed her palm against the bioscanner. "Silence," she projected, throwing her entire mental will against the intruder. "You are dead. You are a memory echo. Be silent. Dead men do not get motion sickness," the voice retorted. "And I am definitely gonna hurl if you keep spinning around like that." The lift doors hissed shut, sealing her in. Lysara slid down the wall, burying her face in her hands. This was not happening. The ritual was ancient. It was safe. It was a simple transfer of life energy. She had done it a dozen times before with other donors. "Donors," the voice scoffed. "Is that what you call us?" "I prefer the term involuntary lunch." Lysara squeezed her eyes shut. "Get out of my head. I am trying," the voice yelled, the volume of the thought so loud Lysara actually winced physically. "You think I want to be in here? It is like being trapped inside a perfume factory that plays opera music on a loop. Just let me out." "I cannot," she whispered aloud, her voice trembling. "Well, that makes two of us," the voice said. "By the way, the name is Eli, since we are intimately acquainted now." Lysara let out a low, keen sound of distress. She was a daughter of House Vilos, fourth in line to the Emerald Throne, a master of diplomatic arts and shadow weaving. She was not a hostel for the ghosts of dead human couriers. Her private quarters on the delegation ship were a sanctuary of cool stone and flowing water, designed to mimic the caverns of her homeworld. Usually, the sound of the artificial waterfall soothed her. Now, it just made Eli complain about the need to urinate, a sensation Lysara realized with horror was a phantom impulse from his memories, as her body had no such immediate need. She sat in the center of her meditation circle, legs folded, hands resting on her knees. She closed her eyes, attempting to enter the void state, a mental discipline that cleared the mind of all distraction. "Breathe in," she thought. "Breathe out. There is only the self. There is only the silence." "Nice place," Eli commented, little gloomy. "Could use a rug, maybe a poster. Do you guys have posters?" Lysara's eye twitched. "I am meditating. It requires quiet." "Right, meditating. Is that what we are doing? Because it feels like we are sitting on a cold floor ignoring the fact that I am currently haunting your nervous system." Lysara snapped. Her eyes flew open. She stood up and marched to the full-length mirror on the far wall. She needed to see herself. She needed to confirm that she was still Lysara. The reflection that stared back was familiar, yet terrifyingly wrong. Her pale skin was flushed with a heat that shouldn't be there. Her posture, usually fluid and regal, was rigid, her shoulders hunched in a defensive military stance she had never learned. And then there were the eyes. Her left eye was her own, a swirling fractal of violet and silver, but her right eye flickered. The iris contracted, the complex geometric patterns dissolving into a round, simple pupil, a human pupil, a dark brown that looked like wet earth. Lysara screamed, a short, sharp sound, and slapped her hand over her right eye. "Hey!" Eli shouted in her mind. "Watch the hands! You nearly poked me in the eye." "It is my eye," Lysara shouted back, not caring that she was speaking out loud to an empty room. "It was my eye for a second," Eli corrected. "I saw it. I tried to focus on the mirror, and the view shifted. I think I can drive." The horror of that statement washed over Lysara like ice water. "You will do no such thing." She felt a strange sensation in her right arm. It was not a muscle spasm. It was an intention that did not originate from her brain. Her hand lifted, fighting the resistance of her own muscles, and waved at the mirror. "Hello, handsome," Eli's voice drawled in her head. "Looking good for a dead guy." Lysara grabbed her right wrist with her left hand, forcing the limb back down. "Stop it. Stop it at once." "I am not doing it on purpose," Eli argued, his frustration bleeding into her emotional centers, making her suddenly furious. "It is like trying to grab a steering wheel when the autopilot cuts out. If you lose focus." I slid into the driver's seat. Lysara leaned against the wall, breathing hard. The implications were catastrophic. If she lost concentration during a negotiation, during a battle, during a high society dinner, this rough, uncultured human could take control of her body. "I need a doctor," she whispered. "Agreed," Eli said, "but not the one who turned me into a juice box. Find someone who will not finish the job." The physician, an elder of her own species named Dr. Vrel, operated out of a small, unauthorized clinic in the lower levels of the ship. He was an exile, disgraced for asking too many questions about the matriarch's biology, which made him the only person Lysara could trust. Vrel ran the scanner over Lysara's neck, his three-fingered hands shaking slightly. He looked at the holographic readout, then at Lysara, and finally, he simply turned off the machine and sat down heavily. "This is impossible," Vrel murmured. "Tell him to be more specific," Eli thought. "Impossible good or impossible bad?" "What is it?" Lysara asked, buttoning her high collar to hide the bite mark. "The human," Vrel said, his voice low. He was not clean. Lysara frowned. He was scrubbed. "The director assured me." "I do not mean hygiene," Vrel interrupted. "I mean his blood. It was laden with a dormant pathogen, a nanophage, military grade, but ancient, something from the deep war era. It was designed to act as a fail-safe for soldiers, a way to back up consciousness in the event of catastrophic physical trauma." Lysara felt the blood drain from her face. "Wait," Eli interrupted, his voice sharp. "I remember the injection. Before I deployed to the colonies, they said it was a vaccine for jungle fever." The physician continued. "When your venom entered his bloodstream, it should have paralyzed the nervous system and prepared the bioenergy for consumption. Instead, the venom acted as a catalyst. It woke the nanophage up. The machines in his blood saw your biology not as a threat, but as empty hard drive space. They uploaded him into you." Lysara stared at the doctor. "You are saying—" "You are a coalescent," Vrel whispered the word like a curse. "Two minds. One vessel. It is a forbidden fusion. Lady Lysara. The matriarchs outlawed this 3,000 years ago. They called it the abomination of two souls." "Abomination seems a little harsh," Eli muttered. though Lysara could feel his underlying fear. I prefer the term roommate. What happens if they find out? Lysara asked. Vrel looked at her with sorrowful eyes. They will not just kill you. They will dissect you while you are still alive to see how the fusion holds. And then they will burn every cell of your body to ensure the corruption does not spread. Lysara sat in silence. The hum of the ship's engines felt like a vibration in her teeth. Okay, Eli said, his voice stripped of all humor. So, we are walking contraband. That is great. That is just fantastic. Is there a cure? Lysara asked. Can you extract him? The nanophage has woven his neural pattern into your brainstem, Vrel said. To remove him now would be to lobotomize yourself. You would be a vegetable, and he would be deleted. I vote no on the deletion, Eli said quickly. Lysara stood up. Thank you. Vrel, you will speak of this to no one. I value my life. Lady Lysara, the old doctor said, but you must be careful. If your eyes change, if you speak with his voice, if you show knowledge you should not possess, the Inquisitors will know. Back in the corridor, Lysara walked with a stiff, controlled gait. She was trying to keep Eli locked down, visualizing a steel cage around his part of her mind. You can stop squeezing, Eli grumbled. I am not going to jump out and do jazz hands. We are in this together now, right? If you die, I die. Again, I did not ask for this, Lysara hissed under her breath. Neither did I, Eli shouted. I was just doing a job. I did not ask to be part of some vampire science project. I want my body back. Your body is dead, Lysara reminded him brutally. It is ash in the incinerator by now. Then I want agency, Eli demanded. I am not going to sit in the back seat and watch you eat people for the next century. I do not eat people, Lysara corrected. I consume bioenergy. It is usually non-lethal. You were a special case, a political gift. Yeah. Well, I would like to file a complaint with customer service, Eli snapped. Look, Princess, we have a problem. Someone put that nanophage in me. Someone knew what would happen if a Kylori bit me. You think that was an accident? Lysara stopped walking. A passing drone swerved to avoid her. She had not considered that. The director had selected Eli. The director worked for the council. You think it was a trap? She asked. I think I was a landmine, Eli said. And you stepped right on me. We need to find out why. We need to see my file. Lysara hesitated. Investigating the council was treason, but existing as she was now was already a death sentence. Fine, she said, but we do it my way. No outbursts, no taking control of my limbs, and absolutely no comments on my wardrobe. Deal, Eli said. But for the record, the fractal jewelry is a bit much. You look like a chandelier. Accessing the secure archives required a level of clearance Lysara possessed, but navigating the human-built subsystems of the security grid did not. They stood in a server room deep within the delegation ship. The air was frigid, kept cold for the supercomputers. Lysara approached a terminal, her fingers hovering over the interface. Move your hand left, Eli instructed. That is a standard UEG lock. I used to bypass these in my sleep. The code cycles every 10 seconds. You have to hit the entry key on the third beat. I do not know the rhythm, Lysara thought. I do, Eli said. Relax your hand. Let me guide the fingers. Lysara took a deep breath and lowered her mental barriers just a fraction. It was a sickening sensation, like inviting a stranger to reach into her chest and squeeze her heart. She felt Eli's presence surge forward, not aggressive this time, but focused. Her fingers, usually elegant and slow, suddenly tapped out a rapid, staccato rhythm on the holographic keys. Tap, 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 enter. Access granted. The terminal chimed. Boom, Eli thought, a wave of smug satisfaction washing over them. Still got it. Impressive, Lysara admitted grudgingly. Search for Project Hesperus, Eli said. That was the name on the crates I saw the night I got grabbed. I thought it was just a trade label. Lysara navigated the files. When the folder for Hesperus opened, a wall of data scrolled past. It was a joint operation. Human military, Kylori bioengineers. The objective, weaponized symbiosis. They read in silence, the horror mounting with every line. The project was not about peace. It was about war. The Council and the human elite were trying to create a super soldier, a human host with the durability and psychic potency of a Kylori, but without the vulnerability to sunlight or the need for high-maintenance bioenergy. And then they found the list. Subject 734, Eli Vance, status compatible, markers, high aggression, low social attachment, previous exposure to nanophage strain Delta 9. They bred me for this. Eli's voice was quiet, dangerously calm. They didn't just pick me up off the street. They have been watching me since I left the service. They let my life fall apart so I would be desperate, so no one would miss me. Lysara felt his rage. It was not like her own anger, which was cold and sharp. His anger was hot, a burning firestorm of betrayal. It flooded her system. Her heart hammered. Her vision turned red at the edges. Those sons of bitches, Eli roared in the mindscape. Control yourself, Eli, Lysara warned, clutching the console. Your emotions are bleeding through. They treated me like cattle, Eli screamed. And you helped them, I did not know, Lysara shouted back. You are one of them. Suddenly, Lysara's mouth opened. Her fangs, fully extended, snapped down with a vicious click. She hissed, a feral, animalistic sound that echoed in the quiet server room. She clamped a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide. I didn't mean to do that, Eli stammered, his rage receding instantly into shock. We have to go, Lysara said, trembling. Before I hurt someone, the diplomatic banquet that evening was a torture session. Lysara wore a gown of deep crimson, a color that Eli noted wryly matched the wine she was pretending to sip. The hall was filled with the galaxy's power players, Kylori matriarchs in floating gravity chairs and human generals in medals that gleamed under the chandeliers. Lysara moved through the crowd, offering polite nods and hollow pleasantries. Inside, she and Eli were having a war council. That guy at the head table, Eli said, his focus sharpening her vision on a heavy-set human with a scar running through his eyebrow. General Kalen. He was my commanding officer. He signed my discharge papers. He is the liaison for Hesperus, Lysara noted, reading the aura of authority around him. He knew. Eli seethed. He looked me in the eye, shook my hand, and sent me out to rot until they were ready to harvest me. Calm down, Lysara ordered. Her hands were shaking and she hid them in the folds of her dress. They approached the table. General Kalen looked up, his eyes glassy with expensive intoxication. Ah, Lady Lysara, Kalen beamed. And how is the gift? Settling in well? Lysara felt Eli's consciousness lunge. It was a physical blow to her mind. Let me at him, Eli growled. Let me rip his throat out. I can do it. I know how to use your claws. One swipe. No! Lysara mentally screamed, building a wall of willpower. But the wall was cracking. Eli's hatred was too pure, too raw. Lysara's upper lip curled back, revealing the tips of her fangs. Her pupils dilated, snapping into the vertical slits of a predator about to strike. A low growl vibrated in her chest, audible to everyone at the table. The conversation nearby stopped. Kalen blinked, his smile faltering. Lady Lysara, are you quite well? Lysara fought for control. She dug her fingernails into her own palm, using the sharp pain to anchor herself. She forced Eli back, shoving him into the dark recesses of her mind with every ounce of mental strength she possessed. "Forgive me, General," she gasped, forcing her face into a mask of pained civility. "Oh, hunger episode. The integration is still settling. I must excuse myself." She turned and walked away, her pace dignified but brisk. She could feel Eli sulking in the back of her head, a brooding storm cloud. "You should have let me kill him," Eli muttered. If you kill him, we are both dead in 10 seconds, Lysara scolded. "You have to think like a spy, not a grunt." "I am a grunt," Eli retorted. "That is what they made me." Later, on the observation deck, looking out at the stars streaking past in slipstream, the anger finally burned itself out, leaving only a hollow ache. Lysara leaned against the railing. "I am sorry," she said softly. "For what?" Eli asked, his voice tired. "For what my people did to you. I was raised to believe we were protectors, shepherds. I did not know the shepherd was also the butcher." Eli was silent for a long time. Then, she felt a shift in his presence. It wasn't anger anymore. It was a heavy, weary sadness. "I joined up because my dad died of lung rot in the mines," Eli said. "I wanted the medical benefits. I wanted to be someone who mattered. I thought, if I fight for the system will take care of me." He laughed, a bitter sound in her mind. "Turns out, the system takes care of everything, just not in the way you want." Lysara looked at her reflection in the glass. The eyes were both hers again, violet and steady. "I never wanted this life either," she admitted. "I wanted to study xenobotany. I wanted to grow things. But a daughter of House Vilos does not grow flowers. She grows influence. I am just a weapon in a pretty dress. Eli, just like you were a weapon in a uniform." "Well," Eli said, and she could almost feel him shrugging. "At least you have a better tailor." Lysara smiled. It was a genuine smile, the first she had felt in years. "So," Eli said, "we are both weapons, broken ones. What do we do now?" "We aim ourselves at the people who broke us," Lysara said. She turned to leave the deck, but paused as she passed a ventilation grate near the auxiliary conference room. Voices drifted up, hushed, conspiratorial. Lysara froze. "Quiet." She signaled Eli. She knelt, enhancing her hearing with a thought. The voice of the high matriarch, her own mother, drifted through the grate. The prototype appears stable, despite the anomaly at the ritual, and the voice of General Kalen answered. "If the bond holds, we can move to Phase 2. We have 3,000 units in cryo-storage ready for the nanophage. Once we prove that the coalescent state can be controlled, we won't need treaties anymore. We will have an army that bridges the gap between our species." Lysara stopped breathing. "And Lysara?" the general asked. "She is the test bed," the matriarch replied coldly. "If she breaks, we dissect her to find the flaw. If she succeeds, we replicate her. She is not a diplomat anymore. General, she is patient zero." Lysara stood up slowly. The horror was absolute, but beneath it, she felt something else rising, a cold, hard resolve. And for the first time, Eli's presence didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt like backup. "You heard the lady," Eli whispered, his voice vibrating with lethal intent. "Patient zero. You ready to show them what kind of infection we really are?" Lysara smoothed her dress. Her fractal eyes glittered in the darkness. "Yes," she thought. "I believe I am." The realization settled over them like a shroud of lead. They were not just fugitives. They were the blueprint for a new era of slavery. Standing in the shadows of the observation deck, Lysara felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her cold in a way that had nothing to do with the ambient temperature of the ship. They are going to farm us, Eli thought, his mental voice devoid of its usual sarcasm. Not just me. Everyone like me. Every grunt, every street rat, every person no one will miss. They are going to inject them with that nanophage and turn them into batteries for your people. And my people will become the pilots, Lysara replied, her internal voice trembling. We will be the drivers of human flesh suits. It is not symbiosis, it is possession. We have to leak this, Eli said, the rage returning, hot and bright. We go to the comms array right now. We broadcast everything, the files, the recording of your mother, the Hesperus data. We burn it all down. Lysara shook her head, a sharp, jerky motion. No. If we broadcast now, the Council will scrub the network before the truth reaches the colonies. They will isolate the signal, claim it is a terrorist fabrication, and then they will purge my house. They will kill my family. Eli, even the innocent ones. Your family is planning to eat my species, Eli shouted in the silence of her skull. Not all of them, Lysara countered, though her conviction was thin. If we act rashly, we lose. We need allies. We need proof that cannot be deleted. We do not have allies. Eli snapped. I am a dead courier, and you are a walking political crisis. I have one, Lysara said. She closed her eyes, summoning a memory of a sprawling estate on her homeworld, filled with strange machines and forbidden texts. My Aunt Vera. She was exiled from the High Council for suggesting that feeding on sentience was evolutionary stagnation. She is a scientist, a radical. Is she the kind of radical who will help us, or the kind who will put us in a jar? She is the kind who will appreciate the irony of our existence, Lysara said. But she is on Xylos Prime, my homeworld. That is 3 sectors away, Eli noted, and we are currently stuck on a diplomatic flagship surrounded by the most paranoid security forces in the galaxy. Then we better start moving, Lysara said, smoothing the silk of her gown. Not in that dress, Eli grumbled. You look like a target painted in neon. The escape began not with a bang, but with a descent into the bowels of the massive ship. Lysara discarded her heavy ceremonial robes in a waist chute, leaving her in the sleek, form-fitting undersuit she wore beneath. It was flexible, designed for movement, though still far too ornamental for Eli's taste. They moved through the service corridors, the air growing hotter and smelling of ozone and hydraulic fluid. Take the next left, Eli instructed. Standard United Earth government schematic. They always put the coolant flush tunnels behind the maintenance lifts. Are you certain? Lysara asked, hesitating at the junction. This is a flagship, not a freighter. Government contracts go to the lowest bidder. Sweetheart, Eli said. Trust me, I spent 5 years crawling through vents like this fixing comms relays. The architecture is lazy. Lysara took the left. She moved with a supernatural grace, her steps silent on the metal grating. Eli watched through her eyes, analyzing the shadows, checking the sight lines. It was a disorienting experience for him, being a passenger in a body that moved faster than his own reflexes could track. They reached a bulkhead door marked with a yellow warning hazard. Override code is 4729, Eli projected. Lysara punched it in. The light turned green. See? Eli said. Lazy. They slipped through the door and found themselves on a catwalk suspended over the massive fusion drive of the ship. The roar was deafening, a constant thrum that vibrated in Lysara's teeth. Below them, engineering drones buzzed around the blue-white core like flies. "We need to get to the lower hangar," Eli said. "That is where they keep the impounded vessels, smugglers, unregistered transports, stuff that doesn't have official transponders." Lysara began to run across the catwalk, her balance perfect on the narrow railing. "Whoa, easy," Eli panicked. "If you fall, we incinerate." "I will not fall," Lysara thought calmly. "My vestibular system is far superior to yours." She jumped a 10-foot gap where the catwalk had retracted, landing silently on the other side. Eli felt the muscles in her legs coil and release, a sensation of raw power that he had never experienced in his own battered body. "Okay," he admitted. "That was impressive. But don't get cocky." A siren blared, cutting through the roar of the engine. Red lights began to strobe against the walls. "They found the robes," Eli said. "We are on the clock." Lysara sprinted. She burst through the access door at the end of the catwalk and emerged into the freight logistics hub. This was the dirty underbelly of the diplomatic vessel, where crates of supplies were loaded and waste was ejected. It was also crawling with security drones, 4 of them, floating spheres of chrome and sensors, spun around as she entered. Their weapon ports opened with a mechanical hiss. "Halt!" A synthesized voice boomed. "Identify! Run!" Eli commanded. Lysara bolted to the right, diving behind a stack of shipping containers just as the air where she had been standing turned into superheated plasma. "They are shooting to kill," Lysara screamed mentally. "I thought I was a valuable prototype." "They are shooting to disable," Eli corrected, analyzing the scorch marks on the floor. "That was a suppression setting. It will just boil your skin off, not vaporize you." Comforting, right? I cannot fight 4 hunter drones. Lysara panicked, pressing her back against the cold metal of the crate. "I am a diplomat. I know fencing and ritual combat. Not this." "Good thing you brought a soldier," Eli said. "Let me drive." "What?" "Give me the body," Eli demanded. "Just the motor functions. You handle the senses. I handle the violence." There was no time to argue. A drone drifted around the corner of the crate, its red eye charging. Lysara exhaled, a sharp release of breath, and mentally stepped back. She unlocked the barrier she had built around Eli's consciousness. The transition was instant and jarring. Eli felt the world snap into focus. He felt the length of Lysara's limbs, the center of gravity shifting, the sharpness of her claws. But he also brought his own muscle memory, 30 years of bar fights, trench warfare, and dirty survival tactics. The drone fired. Eli didn't dodge. He moved. He dropped Lysara's body into a slide, going under the plasma bolt. As he slid, he lashed out with her left hand, burying her obsidian-tipped claws into the drone's anti-grav unit. He ripped it out with a savage jerk. The drone sparked and crashed into the floor. One down, Eli thought, the thrill of combat flooding Lysara's bloodstream with adrenaline. 3 more drones descended. Eli used Lysara's supernatural strength to leap, kicking off the side of a container. He landed on the second drone, driving his knee into its optical sensor. He pushed off, backflipping away as the machine spun out of control and collided with the third. "Behind you," Lysara shouted in his head. Eli spun, but he was a fraction too slow. The 4th drone fired a stunning net, an expanding mesh of electrified cables. "I have it," Lysara's thought cut in. She instinctively took back control of her eyes and perception. Time seemed to slow down. She saw the trajectory of every wire in the mesh. She did not need to think. She just reacted. She twisted her body in midair, contorting in a way no human spine could manage, slipping through a gap in the expanding net. She landed in a crouch, and Eli surged forward again, taking the legs. He grabbed a heavy pry bar from a nearby workbench and hurled it like a javelin. It slammed into the fourth drone's intake fan, shattering the turbine. Silence returned to the logistics hub, save for the sparking of ruined machinery. Lysara stood up, breathing hard. She looked at her hands. They were trembling, but not with fear. That, she whispered internally, that was effective. Eli finished. It was more than effective. It was intoxicating. For a few seconds there had been no barrier between them, no him and her. Just a singular fluid entity that moved with the precision of a machine and the grace of a dancer. The adrenaline high was shared, a feedback loop of exhilaration that felt dangerously intimate. Eli could feel the heat in her skin. She could feel the grim satisfaction in his mind. They stood there for a beat too long, savoring the feeling of being alive, of being powerful. "We have to move," Eli said, his voice softer now. "More will be coming." Lysara nodded, shaking off the daze. "The lower hangar is this way." They sprinted through the final blast doors and emerged onto the flight deck. It was a chaotic graveyard of confiscated ships. There were rusty ore haulers, retrofitted shuttles, and sleek pleasure yachts seized from tax evaders. That one. Eli pointed mentally to a beat-up asymmetrical vessel that looked like a flying brick with engines taped to the back. Corellian design light freighter, fast engines, illegal shielding, and manual controls. "It looks like garbage," Lysara noted. "It looks like freedom," Eli corrected. "And nobody is going to be looking for a noblewoman in a trash hauler." They ran up the boarding ramp. The hatch was locked, but Lysara simply jammed her claws into the mechanism and tore the control panel out. The door hissed open. Inside, the cockpit smelled of stale tobacco and engine grease. Eli felt a wave of nostalgia. "Get in the pilot's seat," Eli said. Lysara slid into the worn leather chair when it was too big for her. She looked at the dashboard. It was a nightmare of analog switches, dials, and levers. "I do not know how to fly this," she said, staring at the controls. "My ships are controlled by neural interface and voice command. This is archaic." "That is why I am here," Eli said. "Put your hands on the yoke." "No, not like that. You are holding it like a wine glass. Grip it." Lysara gripped the yoke, her sharp claws dug into the rubber coating. "Gentle," Eli shouted. "Do not puncture the steering." "I am trying," she hissed. "These buttons are too small for my fingers." "Okay, look. I will handle the throttle and the navigation computer. You handle the stick and the stabilizers. We have to do this together. On 3, outside." The hangar doors began to close. Armored troopers were pouring onto the deck, firing kinetic rounds that pinged off the hull. 1. Eli counted. Lysara flipped the ignition switches Eli highlighted in her mind. The engines coughed, then roared to life with a bone-shaking rattle. 2. Eli punched in the pre-flight sequence, bypassing the security lockout. 3. Lysara slammed the throttle forward. The ship lurched, scraping the deck plating and shot toward the narrowing gap in the hangar doors. "Pull up," Eli screamed. "Pull up or we are a hood ornament." Lysara hauled back on the yoke. The ship groaned, tilted vertically, and scraped its belly against the closing blast doors, sending a shower of sparks raining down on the troopers below. They punched through the atmospheric shield and into the vacuum of space. The silence was sudden and absolute. "Punch it," Eli said. "FTL drive is spooled. Get us out of here." Lysara hit the red button on the console. The stars outside the viewport elongated into streaks of white fire. The G-force slammed her back into the seat, and then the universe twisted. Usually, a jump to faster-than-light travel was a moment of disorientation. But for a coalescent, it was something else entirely. The nanophage in Eli's blood reacted to the dimensional shift. The cockpit dissolved. The smell of grease vanished. Lysara was standing in a field of white static. She was no longer wearing the pilot's headset. She looked down. She was wearing her ceremonial robes again, pristine and clean. She looked up. Standing 10 feet away from her was a man. He was of average height, with messy dark hair and a face that looked like it had been broken and put back together a few times. He wore a faded military jacket and jeans. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. Eli, Lysara gasped. She reached up to touch her face. It felt solid. Is this, she began, a dream? Eli said. His voice did not echo in her head. It came from his mouth. He looked at his own hands, turning them over. The nanophage creates a neural buffer during the jump. Since we are sharing a brain, I guess we are sharing a waiting room. He took a step toward her. Lysara instinctively stepped back, raising her chin in a gesture of noble haughtiness. Stay back, she warned. We do not know the rules of this place. The rules? Eli laughed, a rough, genuine sound. Lys, we are ghosts in a machine. There are no rules. He stopped, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You saved me, he said softly. Back there in the hangar. You could have let the troopers take the ship. You could have surrendered and be dissected. Lysara deflected. I acted in self-preservation. Bullshit, Eli said. He took another step. You enjoyed it. The fight. The flying. For the first time in your life, you weren't a statue on a pedestal. Lysara lowered her guard. He was right. The rush of adrenaline was still humming in her phantom veins. I did, she whispered. Is that what it feels like to be human? To live so close to the edge? That is what it feels like to be alive, Eli said. Something neither of us has been for a long time. He was close now. Close enough that she could see the gray flecks in his eyes. Close enough to touch. Tentatively, Eli reached out a hand. Lysara did not flinch. She slowly raised her own hand. Their fingers met. There was no warmth, but there was a sensation, a hum of electric recognition. It was the first time they had touched as separate entities since she had bitten him. I thought I was done, Eli confessed, his voice cracking slightly. Lying on that table, I thought finally no one needs me. No one wants anything from me. I can just rest. He looked at their joined hands. And now, he continued, I am stuck inside the most demanding high-maintenance creature in the galaxy, and she needs me to survive. Lysara let out a shaky laugh. I am not high-maintenance. You require blood and silk sheets, Eli teased, stepping closer. But thank you for not deleting me. I could not do it alone, Lysara admitted. The vulnerability of the moment was overwhelming. In the waking world, they were fused, messy, and chaotic. Here, stripped of the flesh, they were just two souls standing in the void. She looked up at him. The sarcasm was gone from his face. He looked at her not as a monster or a noble, but as a woman. The distance between them closed. It was not a conscious decision. It was a gravitational pull. Lysara felt a yearning that terrified her, a desire to be understood, to be seen, fully and completely. Eli leaned in. Lysara tilted her head back. Their breath mingled in the static air. Lys, he whispered, just as their lips were about to brush. The white world shattered. Lysara gasped, jolting forward in the pilot's seat. The cockpit was back. The stars had returned to normal points of light. The console was beeping an arrival alert. Whoa! Eli's voice was back in her head, sounding breathless and shaken. That was intense. Lysara gripped the yoke, her knuckles white. Her heart was racing, and she knew Eli could feel every beat of it. She flushed, a deep violet hue rising to her cheeks. "We have arrived," she said, her voice tight, pretending the moment in the void had not happened. Below them, Xylo's prime rotated in the dark. It was a world of haunting beauty. The planet was dark, illuminated only by the faint bioluminescent glow of its cities. The architecture was grown, not built, spires of obsidian living stone that twisted and bloomed like black flowers under the starlight. Massive rings of orbital docks floated like halos around the equator. "It looks like a goth teenager designed a planet," Eli commented, though the humor was forced. He was trying to dial back the tension. "It is beautiful." Lysara defended automatically. She guided the stolen freighter toward the southern hemisphere, away from the glittering capital and toward the jagged coastlines of the Obsidian Sea. "My aunt lives in the Dead Zone," she explained, "an ancient fortress from the pre-unification wars. The Council does not patrol there. They landed on a crumbling landing pad that jutted out over the black churning ocean. The airlock hissed open, and the smell of the world hit them, salt, ozone, and the sweet decaying scent of night-blooming flora." Lysara walked down the ramp, her steps echoing on the stone. The fortress gates, massive slabs of ironwood, groaned open before she even reached them. Standing in the courtyard was a figure wrapped in a lab coat stained with various colorful fluids. She had wild, graying hair and wore goggles that magnified her eyes to comical proportions. "Vera." "Well," Vera called out, her voice raspy from too many chemical fumes, "if it isn't the prodigal niece, and you brought a stolen ship, I am so proud. I thought you would die of boredom in the capital." "Aunt Vera," Lysara said, bowing slightly. "I need sanctuary." Vera walked closer, holding up a strange, ticking device. She waved it over Lysara. "Sanctuary?" she asked, squinting at the readout. "You do not need sanctuary, child. You need an exorcist." She tapped the device. "You are running at 200% neural capacity. 2 heart signatures, and one of them." Vera looked up, grinning wickedly. "One of them smells like cheap tobacco and repressed trauma." "Hey," Eli shouted in the headspace. "I do not smell like tobacco anymore." "He speaks." Vera cackled. "Hello, little ghost. I haven't seen a coalescent in 3 centuries. Come in, before the orbital satellites pick up your bickering." Vera's laboratory was a cavernous hall filled with bubbling vats, floating holograms of anatomy, and dissected specimens of creatures Eli didn't want to identify. She sat them down, or rather, sat Lysara down, on a bioscan table and handed her a cup of thick, green tea. "Drink," Vera ordered. "It stabilizes the synaptic firing. You are leaking emotions all over the place." Lysara drank. The tea tasted like moss, but it quieted the constant static in her mind. "So," Vera said, leaning against a workbench, "you bit the courier. The courier had a nanophage. Now you are roommates. Tale as old as time. It was a trap," Lysara said. "The Council, the humans, they are working together." "I know," Vera said, her face darkening. She tapped a console, and a hologram of a double helix DNA strand appeared, but the strands were bound with metal. "They call it the Unity Project publicly. Privately, it is the Hive Protocol." "Hive?" Eli asked. Vera looked directly at Lysara's eyes, addressing Eli. "The coalescent bond was outlawed not because it was an abomination. Little ghost. It was outlawed because it was too powerful. One mind, perfectly synced, is a marvel. But the ancient matriarchs discovered that if you use a nanophage network, you can chain the minds." She expanded the hologram. It showed one central Kylori figure connected to thousands of human figures. One driver, Vera whispered, 1,000 cars. A matriarch could sit on her throne and pilot an entire legion of human soldiers. The humans provide the adrenaline, the durability, the expendable flesh. The matriarch provides the will, perfect obedience, perfect coordination. Lysara felt sick. My mother. Your mother wants to be a god, Vera said, and she needs a prototype to prove it works. That is you. And the nanophage? Eli asked. Why me? Vera sighed. You weren't the only one, boy. My scans of the human military data network show that this vaccine was administered to 3 divisions of shock troops. 10,000 men and women. They are walking receivers, just waiting for a signal. Eli went cold. He thought of his squad, his friends, people he had served with. They were all ticking time bombs. We have to stop it, Eli said. We have to extract the nanophage. I cannot extract it, Vera said bluntly. It is fused to your souls now. If I cut it out, you both die. Then what? Lysara asked. We lean into it, Vera said, a dangerous glint in her eyes. We do not break the bond. We stabilize it. We make it stronger. Stronger? Lysara asked warily. Right now, you are fighting for the steering wheel, Vera explained. You are clumsy, but if you synchronize, if you truly accept the bond, you can do things neither species can do alone. You can walk through their firewalls. You can manipulate the biotech of the ships. You can see the code behind the reality. She leaned in close. You want to expose the conspiracy? You do not need a broadcast tower. You need to become the virus that infects their network. You need to infiltrate the high summit. The summit, Eli realized. That is where the treaty is being signed. Exactly, Vera said. But to do that, you have to stop acting like 2 people trapped in a sack. You have to become one, and that... She looked at them with pity. That is the hardest thing any sentient being can do. To let go of the I and become the we. Lysara looked down at her hands. She could feel Eli's fear. It mirrored her own. If we do this, she asked quietly, will we ever be able to separate? Will I ever be just Lysara again? Will he ever be just Eli? Vera did not answer immediately. She turned away, fiddling with a microscope. Survival first, she muttered. Philosophy later. The silence stretched in the laboratory. Lysara felt Eli's presence wrap around her mind. It wasn't intrusive this time. It was a comfort, a scaffold holding her up. I am not going anywhere, Lys, Eli thought. We do this, we save the others, then we figure out the rest. Lysara nodded slowly. We will do it, she told her aunt. Teach us. As Vera began to calibrate her machines, Lysara and Eli stayed quiet. But the thought hung between them, unspoken and terrifying. They were saving the world by erasing themselves. Every step closer to victory was a step closer to losing the boundary of where he ended and she began. And looking back at the near kiss in the dreamscape, neither of them was sure they wanted to stop it. The synchronization chamber was not a room in the physical world. It was a construct, a stable hallucination anchored by the nanophage and guided by Vera's external machinery. To Lysara, it looked like the grand atrium of her ancestral home, with soaring arches of living obsidian and waterfalls that defied gravity. To Eli, it looked like the roof of his favorite dive bar in Sector 4, complete with rusted ventilation fans and the smell of cheap noodles. The result was a chaotic mashup. Black stone pillars rose out of cracked concrete. Neon signs for noodle shops flickered above ancient, silent pools. It was a perfect visual metaphor for their existence. Eli stood on the edge of the roof, looking down at the strange, swirling abyss that marked the edge of their shared consciousness. He wore his old courier jacket, a mental projection of his self-image. Lysara stood a few feet away, dressed in training leathers, her silver hair tied back. Again, Vera's voice boomed from the sky, sounding like God speaking through a bad intercom. You are drifting. The synaptic delay is 0.4 seconds. If you hesitate that long in a fight, you are dead. Sync up. Eli turned to Lysara. Ready, princess, he thought. I am ready, she replied. Her voice in the dreamscape was clear, stripped of the distortion of radio or distance. He threw a punch. It was a telegraphed right hook, slow enough for her to see. In the real world, Lysara would have dodged it with vampiric speed. Here, the goal was not to dodge. The goal was to accept. As his fist moved, Lysara didn't block. Instead, she mentally stepped into the action. She visualized the muscle groups in Eli's shoulder, the rotation of his hip, the intent behind the blow. For a split second, the world blurred. Lysara vanished. Eli vanished. There was just a single entity moving with perfect kinetic chain. The fist stopped an inch from a stone pillar, the force of the air pressure cracking the rock. They separated, stumbling back. Better, Eli panted. I felt you that time. You didn't fight the aggression. You rode it. It is overwhelming, Lysara admitted, wiping sweat from her forehead. Your emotions, Eli, they are so loud. When you strike, there is a spike of adrenaline that tastes like copper. Is that how humans live? Constantly vibrating? Keeps us warm. Eli grinned. Now, my turn. The hunger. Lysara hesitated. This was the dangerous part. She closed her eyes and lowered her mental shields. She allowed the primal need of her species to surface, the burning, hollow ache in the center of her chest that demanded bioenergy. Usually, she suppressed it, hid it behind meditation and tea. Now, she pushed it toward Eli. Eli staggered. In the dreamscape, the neon lights turned blood red. He felt a sudden ravenous void open up in his stomach. It wasn't just hunger for food, it was a hunger for life, for warmth, for the electric spark that animated living things. It was terrifying. Jesus! Eli gasped, dropping to one knee. How do you not eat everyone you meet? Discipline, Lysara whispered, stepping closer. You must not fear it, Eli. Fear makes it jagged, and you must accept it. It is fuel, nothing more. Eli grit his teeth. He imagined the hunger not as a monster, but as an engine. He visualized a throttle. He took a breath, mental and deep, and pushed back against the wave. He didn't crush it. He steered it. The red tint faded from the world. The hunger remained, a low hum in the background, but it was manageable. Okay, Eli said, standing up shakily. I think I got it. It is like riding a bike made of teeth. Excellent, Vera's voice boomed. Now kiss! Lysara's eyes snapped open. Excuse me? I am kidding. Vera cackled. Mostly, the bio readings show a spike in oxytocin every time you two achieve resonance. It is fascinating. You are not just sharing motor functions, you are sharing hormonal responses. When he gets embarrassed, you blush. Lysara, when you get aroused, his heart rate doubles. I am not aroused, Eli shouted at the sky. Your cortisol levels suggest you are lying, or perhaps just panicking, Vera noted dryly. Take a break. We go again in 10 minutes. The sky went quiet. Lysara looked at Eli. He was pointedly looking at a rusted ventilation fan, his ears burning red. She felt a phantom warmth spreading across her own chest, a mirror of his embarrassment. It was an unnerving sensation, to feel someone else's shame so acutely that it became her own. She is crazy, Eli muttered. Your aunt is a mad scientist. She is a genius, Lysara corrected, though she walked over to the edge of the roof to put some distance between them. But she lacks tact. You can say that again, Eli said. He sat down on the concrete ledge, his legs dangling over the abyss. So, 300 years old? You really never... You know? Lysara stiffened. That is a private matter. Nothing is private anymore. Lys, Eli pointed out gently. I saw your memory of the winter solstice ball in 2740. You spent 3 hours hiding in the library so you wouldn't have to dance with Duke Kalen. He stepped on my train, Lysara said defensively. And he smelled of sulfur. He was trying to flirt with you. Eli laughed. And you recited a treatise on agricultural economics. It was a fascinating treatise, Lysara insisted, turning to face him. And what about you, Mr. Expert? I have seen your memories of Sarah. Eli's smile vanished. The neon lights of the dreamscape flickered and dimmed. That was a long time ago, he said quietly. She left you because you wouldn't talk to her, Lysara said, her voice softening. She felt his pain then, a dull, old ache in the center of his chest. It wasn't sharp like the hunger, but it was heavy. You loved her, but you were afraid that if you let her in, she would see the broken parts of you and leave. So you pushed her away until she did. Eli looked down at his hands. Yeah, pretty much. Lysara walked back to him. She sat down on the ledge, her shoulder brushing against his. In the dreamscape, the contact sent a jolt of electricity through them both. I am not Sarah, Lysara said, and I cannot leave. I am literally incapable of walking away. I know, Eli said, that is the only reason I am talking to you. I can feel that is a lie, Lysara whispered. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were rough, calloused from years of manual labor. Hers were smooth, cool, and deadly. When they touched, the barrier between their minds thinned. Lysara felt a rush of warmth, a wave of protective instinct from him that wrapped around her like a blanket. Eli felt her curiosity, her loneliness, and a deep, terrifying desire to be held. It was too much. It was too raw. 10 minutes is up, Eli said abruptly, standing up and pulling his hand away. Let's hit the gym. Lysara stayed seated for a moment, watching him retreat to the center of the roof. She touched her own hand where he had held it. It still tingled. 2 days later, they were ready for the field test. Vera stood in the armory holding a small silver chip and a syringe. This, she said, holding up the chip, is a dampener. I have adjusted the frequency to match your specific bioresonance. When Eli is in control, this will mask Lysara's predatory aura. To sensors and other Kylori, you will read as a standard human. Useful, Eli commented through Lysara's mouth. And this, Vera said, loading the syringe into an auto-injector is a neural key. It is a localized neuroblocker. If you encounter a biometric lock that scans for brainwave patterns, you can trigger this. It will momentarily desynchronize you. For 3 seconds, you will be 2 distinct people again. And why would we want that? Lysara asked, taking back control of her vocal cords. Because some security systems are designed to detect coalescence, Vera warned. The Council is paranoid. If a scanner sees 2 minds in one body, it triggers an alarm. This allows you to phase, to present as just Lysara or just Eli for the duration of the scan. But be careful, phasing hurts. Noted, Eli thought, where are we going? Vera pulled up a holographic map of the coastline. Site Omicron. It is a small processing facility run by a minor noble house loyal to the matriarchs. My sources say they are holding a batch of political dissidents, humans who ask too many questions. They are scheduled for harvest tonight. Harvest. Eli's thought was cold steel. Not if we get there first. The facility was built into the side of a cliff, hidden by holographic camouflage. The rain was falling hard, masking their approach. Lysara moved through the wet underbrush, her movements silent. She wore a matte black tactical suit Vera had fabricated, stripped of all noble ornamentation. 2 guards at the perimeter, Eli noted, analyzing the heat signatures through her eyes. Kylori. Heavy pulse rifles. I see them, Lysara thought. Let me take the one on the left. You take the right. On my mark. Lysara crept closer. She could feel Eli's tactical mind overlaying her own, highlighting patrol patterns and sight lines. It was like having a supercomputer in her brain. Mark. They moved. It wasn't a swap. It was a fusion. Lysara's legs provided the explosive power, launching them out of the brush. As they flew through the air, Eli took the wheel of the upper body reflexes. He tackled the left guard, using Lysara's momentum to drive a knee into the alien's chest. The impact shattered the armor, before the guard could shout. Eli clamped a hand over his mouth and applied a sleeper hold, utilizing Lysara's grip strength. Grip. Simultaneously. Lysara kept partial focus, extending her other hand toward the second guard. She didn't use a weapon. She used the environment. She grabbed a handful of loose gravel and flung it with supernatural velocity. The stones hit the second guard's helmet like bullets, cracking the visor and stunning him. Eli finished the first guard and spun, closing the distance to the second in a blur of motion. A swift chop to the neck, and both sentries were down. Clear, Eli thought. Lysara looked down at the unconscious guards. Her heart was beating slow and steady. No panic, no hesitation. We are good at this, she realized with a shudder. Too good, Eli agreed. Let's get inside. They reached the main airlock. A red laser grid blocked the path. Biometric scanner, Eli warned. It is looking for a pure-blood Kylori authorization. Use the neural key, Lysara commanded. She focused on the implant Vera had placed at the base of her skull. She triggered it. The pain was blinding. It felt like being ripped in half. For 3 seconds, Eli's presence was violently shoved into a dark corner of her mind. Lysara gasped, feeling suddenly small and alone in her own body. She placed her hand on the scanner. Identity confirmed. Lady Lysara of House Vilos. The grid deactivated. As soon as the 3 seconds were up, Eli snapped back into place. The relief was instantaneous. It was like finally taking a breath after holding it underwater. Don't ever do that again unless we have to. Eli groaned in her mind. I felt like I was being deleted. I agree, Lysara whispered, rubbing her temples. They moved deeper into the facility. The smell hit them first, antiseptic covering the scent of fear. They found the holding cells on the lower level. There were 20 humans in cages. Some were sleeping. Others were huddled in corners. Lysara moved to the control console. Eli. The codes. Eli ghost-hacked her fingers again, typing in a rapid override sequence he remembered from his military days. The cell doors hissed open. The humans recoiled, terrified of the tall, pale alien standing before them. Wait! A voice called out. A man stepped forward from the back of the group. He was disheveled, wearing broken glasses and a coat that had seen better decades. He held a datapad like a weapon. You are Lysara Vilos, the man said, his voice shaking but defiant. I saw your face on the news feeds. You are the one who ate the courier. Lysara flinched. Let me talk to him, Eli said. Lysara relaxed her throat muscles. Her posture shifted, her shoulders slumping into a casual, weary slouch that was entirely Eli. I didn't eat him, pal, Lysara said, but the voice was lower, rougher. It had the cadence of the streets. I just got really, really close to him. The man blinked. Who is that? It is me. Eli. The courier. Look, it is a long story involving a lot of bad science. But right now, we are breaking you out. You got a name? Silas, the man stammered. I am a journalist. Or I was until I started tracking the supply trucks. Jackpot, Eli thought. Silas, listen to me, Eli said through Lysara. We are going to cut the power. There is a service tunnel 300 meters north. It leads to the beach. Go. We cannot just leave, Silas said, tapping his datapad. This facility, it is a relay station. All the data for the western seaboard flows through here. If you want to hurt them, you don't just free the cattle, you burn the ledger. Lysara's eyes lit up. He is right. She moved to the main server bank. Silas plugged in his datapad. I can upload a worm, Silas said, but I need 2 minutes. We have got company, Eli shouted internally. The door at the far end of the hall exploded inward. A squad of heavy troopers stormed in, their armor marked with the crimson sigil of the matriarch's personal guard. Protect the civilian, Lysara shouted. She stepped in front of Silas, her hands glowing with bioenergy. The firefight was chaos. Plasma bolts scorched the walls. Lysara and Eli moved as a whirlwind of destruction. They didn't just fight, they danced. Lysara provided the speed to dodge the incoming fire. Eli provided the brutal efficiency to disable the attackers. A trooper charged them with a stun baton. Lysara ducked, swept his legs, and as he fell, Eli took control to deliver a precise, bone-breaking kick to the helmet. Another trooper aimed at Silas. No! Lysara threw herself across the room, shielding the journalist with her own body. The plasma bolt hit her shoulder. Pain, white-hot and searing, tore through them both. Lysara screamed, but Eli clamped down on the pain receptors, turning the agony into adrenaline. Get up, he roared in her mind. She rose, eyes glowing a furious violet. She unleashed a wave of telekinetic force, a raw projection of her will, throwing the remaining troopers against the far wall with the force of a train wreck. Silence fell. Silas was staring at her. Wide-eyed. Done! The journalist yelled, pulling his datapad free. The worm is in. The database is frying. Go! Lysara rasped, clutching her smoking shoulder. They made it back to Vera's fortress just before dawn. The wound was cauterized, but the psychological damage was fresh. Lysara retreated immediately to the dreamscape. She didn't wait for the synchronization protocols. She just fled into her own mind. She was sitting on the floor of the obsidian atrium, hugging her knees. Her hands were stained with blood, not real blood, but the memory of it. Eli appeared a moment later. He didn't say anything. He just sat down next to her. I enjoyed it, Lysara whispered, her voice trembling. When I threw those men, when I felt their bones break, I felt powerful. I felt like a god. You felt like a survivor, Eli corrected gently. No. Lysara shook her head. It was more than that. The predator in me, it loves the violence. And with your skills, your tactical mind, I am efficient. I am lethal. I am a monster. Eli. Eli reached out and took her face in his hands. He forced her to look at him. Look at me, he said. You threw yourself in front of a plasma bolt to save a stranger, a human stranger who called you a murderer. Lysara blinked, tears forming in her fractal eyes. A monster doesn't do that, Eli said firmly. A predator doesn't sacrifice itself for the prey. You are not a monster, Lys, and you are not a god. You are just a person who has been given a really big gun and is trying to figure out where to point it. But I wanted to kill them, she confessed, and I stopped you. Eli said, that is the deal. You have the power. I have the conscience. Or sometimes, I have the rage, and you have the discipline. We balance the scales. He leaned his forehead against hers. I was terrified too, he admitted softly. Being inside you, feeling that power, it is addictive. I am scared I will forget what it means to be weak, to be human. But you are human, Lysara whispered. You are the most human thing I have ever known. In the dreamscape, the distance between them evaporated. It wasn't just physical proximity, it was a total collapse of barriers. Lysara let go of her guilt. Eli let go of his fear. They didn't kiss. It was more intimate than that. They simply ceased to be two separate shapes. They wrapped around each other, a tangle of limbs and souls, pressing so close that they could feel the vibration of the other's existence. It was a sensation of overwhelming heat and light. Lysara felt Eli's desire, not just a physical hunger, but a deep, aching need to be with her, to stand beside her. And Eli felt her love, a vast oceanic feeling that terrified him with its depth. This is dangerous, Eli murmured against her skin. If we do this, if we really choose this, there is no going back. I do not want to go back, Lysara answered. I choose this. I choose you, Eli, not as a passenger, not as a tool, as my partner, as your equal. Eli added, as my equal. She agreed. The dreamscape flared with golden light, the neon and the obsidian merging into something new. A structure of glass and steel and living light. A home. They woke up in the recovery bay. Vera was checking the monitors, looking smug. Silas was sitting in the corner, typing furiously on his datapad. You two were out for 4 hours, Vera said, and your synchronization rate is at 99%. I assume you worked out your issues? We did, Lysara said, sitting up. She felt different, solid. The constant chatter in her head had settled into a harmonious hum. She didn't need to ask Eli what he was thinking, she just knew. Good, Silas said, standing up. Because we have a problem. He turned the datapad around. The data we stole from the lab confirmed it. The summit isn't just a treaty signing. It is a sales pitch. He tapped the screen, showing a schematic of a massive orbital station, the Helios station. In 3 days, the High Matriarchs and the UEG president are meeting there. They are going to sign the Unity Protocol. It legalizes the harvest of low-income citizens and authorizes the creation of the coalescent legions. Legions, Eli thought, his mind meshing perfectly with Lysara's. Thousands of soldiers like us, but without the choice. And there is more, Silas added grimly. They are planning a demonstration. They are going to bring out the prototype. Lysara went cold. That is me. They are going to parade you out on stage, Silas explained, bound, drugged, and fully merged. They will claim Eli as a volunteer, a patriot who gave his life to the cause. They will use your face to sell slavery. Lysara stood up. Her pain was gone. In its place was a cold, crystalline anger. No, she said. They will not. What is the play? Eli asked. We cannot fight an entire orbital station, and we don't have to fight them, Silas said. We just have to be louder than them. The station has a galaxy-wide broadcast array for the signing ceremony. If we can get to the control room, I can hijack the feed. I can upload the files from Hesperus, the video of the harvest labs. Everything. Vera nodded. And while they are looking at the screens, I can upload a jamming signal to the nanophage frequency. I can wake up the sleeping soldiers. I can give them back their minds, even if just for a moment. It is a suicide mission, Lysara said. The Helios station is the most secure fortress in the sector. Good thing we have a stealth ship and a vampire with a ghost in her head, Eli said, a grin spreading across Lysara's face. Lysara looked at her aunt, then at the journalist. and finally turned her internal gaze to Eli. "Are you with me?" she asked. "Always," Eli replied. "Let's go crash a party." Lysara walked to the viewport, looking up at the stars where the Helios station waited. "Get the ship ready," she ordered. "We leave in the hour." The decision was made. There was no hesitation, no bickering, just a singular, terrifying purpose. They were going to save the world, or they were going to burn together in the attempt. Helios Station did not look like a slaughterhouse. It looked like a crown jewel suspended in the velvet darkness of space, orbiting the churning ochre storms of the gas giant Pontus. The station was a ring of spun glass and white composite metal, vast enough to house a city, glittering with the lights of 1,000 docked starships. Banners draped the exterior docking pylons, massive holographic sheets fluttering in the void. They displayed the interlaced symbols of the United Earth Government and the Kylori High Council, a golden human hand clasping a violet, clawed alien hand. Underneath, in 50 languages, the word unity pulsed with a reassuring, hypnotic rhythm. Inside the grand ballroom, the illusion of peace was even more seductive. Lysara of House Vilo stood near a fountain that flowed with liquid starlight, a rare isotope imported from the core worlds. She wore a gown of midnight blue biofabric that shifted like smoke around her frame, cut high at the neck to hide the pulse point where her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Relax," Eli's voice whispered in the back of her mind, a steadying anchor in the wash of her anxiety. "Your heart rate is spiking. They are going to smell the adrenaline." "I cannot help it," Lysara projected back, keeping her face frozen in a mask of bored nobility. "Every person in this room wants to either use me or dissect me." "Not everyone," Eli corrected. "That waiter over there just wants to know if you are going to finish that crab puff." Lysara looked down at the hors d'oeuvre in her hand. It was a delicate pastry filled with some form of earth crustacean paste. "It smells like industrial cleaner," she noted with distaste. "It is a delicacy in Sector 1, Eli said. "But hey, look at the bright side. At least you are not wearing what that guy is wearing." Eli directed her attention to a Kylori dignitary across the room. The man was draped in a cape made entirely of synthetic peacock feathers and chrome piping that hissed steam every time he moved. "He looks like a robotic chicken that exploded," Eli quipped. Lysara fought the urge to smile. A smile would be out of character. She was supposed to be the stoic, mysterious symbol of the new alliance. "Focus, Eli," she scolded gently. "We are not here to critique the fashion." "Right. Scanning now." Lysara took a sip of her drink, allowing her eyes to drift over the crowd. While she played the part of the guest of honor, Eli was hard at work. Through their shared neural link, he was ghost hacking the local audio feeds, using the station's own surveillance mesh against it. In her vision, threat markers highlighted specific individuals in soft red outlines. "Target acquired," Eli thought, his tone shifting from playful to cold. 3 o'clock. Senator Halloway talking to Archduke Vren, zooming in. Lysara turned her head slightly, pretending to admire a sculpture. Her auditory cortex, boosted by the nanophage, isolated the conversation from the roar of the party. "The logistics for the Sector 7 clearance are finalized," the senator was saying, swirling his champagne. "We are calling it a containment protocol, a localized outbreak of the rot." "And the harvest yields?" the Archduke asked, his voice a low, clicking purr. "Estimated at 40,000 units, the senator replied. "Healthy stock, mostly laborers and unregistered citizens. We will ship the biomatter to the orbital refineries before the media even knows there was a quarantine." Lysara felt a surge of nausea that had nothing to do with the crab puff. They are going to wipe out Sector 7, Eli realized, his thought vibrating with a dark, dangerous fury. That is my home, Liz. That is where I grew up. They are going to gas the whole district and call it a plague just to feed your people. We will stop them, Lysara promised, clutching her glass until the stem cracked. We burn them down, Eli corrected. Tonight. A chime echoed through the ballroom, signaling the beginning of the ceremony. The lights dimmed, focusing on a massive stage at the far end of the hall where the High Matriarch, Lysara's mother, and the Earth President were waiting. It is time, Lysara thought. Signal Vera. Signaling. Eli confirmed. Showtime. Deep in the station's engineering sub-levels. Vera sat cross-legged in a ventilation shaft, typing furiously on a wrist-mounted console. Okay. Little ghost, she muttered into her comms. Let's see how they like a little turbulence. She hit the enter key. On the main promenade, the artificial gravity generator stuttered. For a heart-stopping 2 seconds, the gravity in the ballroom flipped. Champagne floated out of glasses. Dignitaries shrieked as they drifted upward. Then, the gravity slammed back down with bone-jarring force. The lights flickered and died, plunging the station into emergency red. Go! Eli shouted in Lysara's mind. In the confusion, Lysara dropped to a crouch and vanished into the crowd. She moved not like a diplomat, but like a shadow. She slipped through a service door that Silas, their journalist ally, had unlocked remotely. In the corridor, she broke into a run. Silas is at the broadcast junction. Eli updated her, displaying a map of the station in her peripheral vision. He needs 5 minutes to bypass the encryption. We have to get to the data core and physically plug in the drive with the evidence. The data core was 30 levels up, in the most secure spire of the station. They reached a lift bank. The doors were sealed. Let me, Eli said. Lysara surrendered control of her hands. Eli cracked the panel, hot wiring the lift with a speed born of desperation. The doors hissed open, they shot upward. As the floors blurred past, Lysara felt the station waking up. Alarms were screaming now. Security teams deploying, Eli warned, sensing the radio chatter. They know we are not in the ballroom. The lift stopped at the executive level. The doors opened, and the air filled with ozone. A squad of corporate Black Ops soldiers waited in the hall, their rifles raised. Freeze! The lead soldier shouted. Lysara didn't freeze. She merged. The fight that followed was a blur of violence that no single camera could track. Lysara surged forward, dodging a plasma bolt by leaning her torso back at an impossible angle. As she slid across the polished floor, Eli took the wheel. He grabbed the barrel of the nearest rifle, using Lysara's enhanced strength to crush the metal. He headbutted the soldier, the impact sounding like a hammer hitting a melon. Left! Lysara signaled. She took control, spinning away from a stun baton. She unleashed a pulse of bioenergy from her palm, a shockwave of red light that threw 3 soldiers into the wall. Right hook! Eli stepped in, delivering a devastating punch to a soldier's helmet, shattering the visor. They were a whirlwind of duality. Where Eli was brutal and direct, Lysara was fluid and evasive. They covered each other's blind spots instantly. When a soldier tried to flank them, Eli sensed the intent before the trigger was pulled, and Lysara moved the body out of the path of the bullet. Within 30 seconds, the hallway was silent, littered with groaning bodies. Lysara stood in the center of the carnage, breathing heavily. Her dress was torn, revealing the tactical suit beneath. Her fractal eyes were glowing with a terrifying light. Elevator to the core is just ahead, Eli urged. We are close. They sprinted down the hall, their footsteps echoing like gunshots. They reached the massive blast doors of the data core. Lysara placed her hand on the scanner. Override authorization. Alpha 1. Eli broadcasted through the neural key. The heavy doors groaned and began to separate. "We did it," Lysara whispered. "Don't celebrate yet," Eli warned. "I have a bad feeling." The doors opened fully. The room beyond was a vast circular chamber dominated by a towering pillar of blue light, the station's central computer. But standing between them and the console were two figures. One was a woman in flowing silver robes, her face a mask of ageless, icy beauty, the High Matriarch. The other was a man in a dress uniform, heavy with medals, holding a high-caliber pistol with a casual, practiced ease, General Kalen. "Hello, daughter," the matriarch said, her voice smooth as silk over glass. "You are late for your speech," Lysara froze. The sight of her mother, standing so calm amidst the chaos, sent a spike of childhood fear through her. "Steady," Eli whispered. "They were waiting for us." General Kalen stepped forward, checking the charge on his weapon. "I told you, matriarch," the general said, his voice grating like gravel. The conditioning on Vance was weak. He was always a problem case, too much independent thought. "He is not a case," Lysara spat, stepping into the room. "He is a person." The matriarch laughed, a soft, tinkling sound. "Oh, Lysara, you still think this was an accident?" She raised a hand, and the heavy doors slammed shut behind them, locking them in. "We knew about the nanophage," the matriarch revealed, circling them slowly. "We planted it. We knew if a Vilos noble bit a carrier, it would trigger a fusion. You are not a rebel, my dear. You are a proof of concept. We wanted to see if a human mind could survive the interface without shattering." Lysara felt the blood drain from her face. You allowed this? Allowed it? We orchestrated it." The matriarch sneered. "The general provided the vessel, a disposable soldier with no family, someone no one would miss, and I provided the catalyst. You." The general looked at Lysara, at Eli, with cold amusement. "You were always trash." "Vance," the general said, "gutter-born, no prospects. I gave you a purpose. I turned you into the ultimate weapon. You should be thanking me. Dying in an alley in Sector 4 was your destiny. This? This is a promotion. Trash." The word echoed in Eli's mind. Disposable. Nothing. Lysara felt Eli's consciousness recoil. The old trauma. The deep-seated belief that he was worthless, that he was just a grunt to be used and discarded, surged up like black bile. "He is right," Eli thought, his mental voice sounding small and distant. "I was just material. I am just a ghost in your head. Lys." "I am nothing." "No!" Lysara shouted, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. She glared at the general, her eyes burning with a fury that made the seasoned soldier take a step back. "He is not nothing," she screamed. "He is the man who saved me. He is the only thing in this galaxy that is real." "You call him trash? He has more honor in his shadow than you have in your entire empire." The matriarch sighed, looking disappointed. Sentimentality. She tisked, a side effect of the merger. "It seems the human corruption is deeper than we anticipated." She pulled a small device from her robes. It looked like a tuning fork made of black crystal. "It is time to prune the vine," the matriarch said. She struck the device against the palm of her hand. A soundless scream tore through the room. It was a psionic frequency, tuned specifically to the nanophage. Lysara fell to her knees, clutching her head. But the pain was not hers. It was Eli's. It felt like he was being ripped out of her by the roots. Every nerve ending, every shared memory, every tangled emotion was being forcibly severed. "Lys!" Eli screamed in the darkness. "I am slipping. The matriarch walked closer, holding the resonating crystal. "We have a blank shell prepared in the stasis lab," she explained calmly over Lysara's screams. "A clone body. No mind. We will transfer the courier's consciousness into it. He will be a drone, silent, obedient, and you, my daughter, will be cleansed." Inside the mindscape, the world was ending, where the shared city was crumbling. The neon lights were exploding. The ground was cracking open, revealing a cold, white void beneath. Eli was sliding toward the edge. His avatar was flickering, turning transparent. "Let me go," Eli gasped, his grip on the ledge of her mind slipping. "If you hold on, it will kill you. The feedback loop. It will burn your brain out." Lysara stood in the center of the storm. Her physical body was convulsing on the floor of the data core, but her spirit was standing on the edge of the abyss. She looked at Eli. She saw the fear in his eyes. Not fear of death, but fear of being hollowed out. Fear of becoming the machine the general wanted him to be. "I will not let you go," she whispered. "You have to," Eli pleaded. "Live, Lys, be the queen. Change things from the top. I do not want to be a queen," she cried out, tears of light streaming down her face. "I want to be us." She did not pull back. Instead, she jumped. Lysara dove into the void, reaching for him. She ignored the searing pain of the psionic disruption. She ignored the matriarch's failsafe trying to erect a wall between them. She wrapped her arms around Eli's fading form. "Lys, no!" Eli shouted. "You will die!" "I would rather die with you than live as a monster without you," she sobbed, burying her face in his neck. She opened herself completely. She tore down every remaining barrier, the privacy she had clung to, the noble reserve, the fear of losing herself. She incinerated it all. She poured her life force, her blood magic, her very soul into the nanophage. She did not just hold him. She anchored him. She wove him into the marrow of her bones. "You are crazy," Eli whispered, his form solidifying, glowing with a blinding violet light. "You are absolutely crazy. I learned it from you," she answered. And then they snapped back. The failsafe device in the matriarch's hand shattered. The black crystal exploded into dust. The backlash of energy threw the matriarch across the room. Lysara, no. The being that was Lysara and Eli stood up. They did not look the same. The bioluminescence on their skin had shifted from violet to a burning electric white. The air around them crackled with static. They opened their eyes. The fractal iris and the round pupil were no longer fighting. They were superimposed, a perfect, terrifying geometry of predator and human. System authority recognized. A computerized voice boomed from the walls. Coalescent prime detected. The matriarch looked up from the floor, blood trickling from her nose. Impossible. "Get away from the console," Lysara and Eli said in unison. Their voice was a chorus, female and male, harmonic and terrifying. General Kalen roared and raised his pistol. "Die, you freak!" He fired 3 rounds of explosive slugs. They did not dodge. They simply raised a hand. The air shimmered. The bullets stopped in midair, caught in a field of telekinetic density that rippled like water. With a flick of their wrist, they sent the bullets clattering to the floor. "Our turn," they said. They reached out toward the data core. They didn't need to plug in a drive. They didn't need a keyboard. The nanophage, supercharged by their absolute fusion, leaped from their body like an arc of lightning, striking the console. In the broadcast room, Silas saw his screens light up green. "I am in," Silas yelled into his headset. "Uploading now, on every screen in the Helios station." The image of the matriarch and the president vanished. In its place, raw footage began to play. It showed the harvest labs. It showed humans in pods. It showed the general signing orders for the plague in Sector 7. It showed the matriarch discussing the human cattle. In the ballroom, the music stopped. The dignitaries froze. A collective gasp swept through the station. Then, the screaming started. Pandemonium erupted. The human delegation turned on the aliens. The alien guards turned on the humans. The facade of unity shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. In the data core, the general scrambled to his feet, pulling a combat knife. "I will gut you!" he screamed, charging. Lysara and Eli moved to meet him. It was not a graceful fight. It was a brawl. The general was enhanced, strong as an ox, and desperate. He slammed into them, driving them back against the pillar. Eli took the lead on the physical combat. He caught the general's wrist, twisting it with crushing force. But the general head-butted them, hard. Pain exploded in their nose. Blood flowed. High kick. Lysara signaled. They spun, driving a heel into the general's knee. The joint snapped. The general howled but lunged again, tackling them to the ground. As they wrestled, the matriarch rose. She summoned a whip of pure psionic energy, crackling purple and black. She struck. The lash hit them across the back, burning through the tactical suit and searing the skin. "Focus!" Eli shouted. They rolled, kicking the general off. He crashed into the console. The matriarch raised the whip again. "I brought you into this world," she hissed. "I will take you out of it." Lysara took control of the energy. She drew on the blood power in her veins, mixed with Eli's sheer, stubborn will. She caught the psionic whip with her bare hand. The energy sizzled against her palm, but she did not let go. She pulled. The matriarch stumbled forward. "Now!" Eli roared. They closed the distance. They didn't use magic. They used a straight military cross-punch, fueled by 300 years of vampire strength. The fist connected with the matriarch's jaw. The sound was like a thunder crack. The matriarch flew backward, crashing into the glass wall overlooking the gas giant. The glass cracked. She slid to the floor, unconscious. The general tried to rise, but Lysara and Eli turned on him, eyes blazing. "Stay down," they commanded, the voice resonating with such power that the general slumped back, terrified. The station shuddered violently. An explosion rocked the floor. Critical failure. The computer announced, "Orbital stabilizers offline. Gravity failure imminent." The riots, Eli realized. Someone blew the power couplings. "We have to go," Lysara thought. "The station is falling." They grabbed the general's datapad, the final piece of evidence, and ran. The journey back to the hangars was a nightmare. The gravity was fluctuating wildly. One moment they were running on the floor, the next they were leaping across the ceiling. Fires burned in the corridors. They reached the airlock where Silas and Vera were waiting in the battered smuggler ship. The journalist was white-faced, waving them in. "Come on, the docking clamps are releasing." Lysara and Eli stumbled onto the ramp. They were bleeding from a dozen wounds. Their energy was spent. The absolute fusion was fading, leaving them exhausted and separating back into two distinct, tired minds. "Jump!" Eli shouted. They leaped across the gap just as the walkway collapsed. Lysara hit the deck of the ship hard. Vera slammed the airlock shut. "Go! Go!" Silas screamed from the cockpit. The ship lurched away from the station. Through the viewport, they watched. Helios station was burning. The ring was fractured. Debris spiraled down toward the storms of Pontus. The banners of unity were tearing apart, consumed by the fire. Lysara lay on the metal floor, staring up at the ceiling. Eli's presence in her mind was quiet, a warm, steady hum. "We did it," Eli whispered. "We started a war," Lysara replied, her voice raspy. "Yeah," Eli agreed, "but at least it is an honest one." The ship fired its thrusters, banking hard away from the destruction. disappearing into the dark of the fractured galaxy. The galaxy was screaming, but in the heart of the asteroid belt, it was quiet. The refuge was a hollowed-out rock, floating in the drifting debris of a dead solar system. It was known as the Sanctuary of Dust, one of Vira's many safe houses that did not exist on any official star chart. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of recycled oxygen and hydroponic mint. Lysara sat on the edge of a medical cot, watching the holographic screens that lined the jagged stone walls of the cavern. The blue light washed over her pale skin, highlighting the new, silver scars that traced the line of her jaw and vanished beneath the collar of her tunic. On the screens, the universe was on fire. A news anchor from the core worlds, her face pale with shock, spoke over footage of burning government buildings. The riots in Sector 7 have entered their 5th day. The anchor said, human laborers have seized the atmospheric scrubbers, refusing to pay the oxygen tax until the harvest quotas are officially abolished. The screen flickered, changing to a feed from the Kylori homeworld. A group of young aliens, their bio-jewelry torn out in protest, stood on the steps of the High Council, chanting a word that had been forbidden for centuries. Symbiosis. Lysara watched a statue of her own mother, the High Matriarch, being pulled down by a cheering crowd of humans and aliens working together with ropes and grappling hooks. They are angry, Eli's voice murmured in her mind. It was a soft, steady presence, like a hand resting on her shoulder. Good. They are terrified, Lysara corrected, though she did not disagree. They have just realized that the monsters under the bed were actually the people signing their paychecks. She felt Eli's amusement ripple through their shared nervous system. Well, you know what they say. The truth will set you free, but first it will make you really mad. Silas, the journalist, walked into the room. He looked exhausted. He had not slept in 3 days, fueled only by caffeine stimulants and the sheer adrenaline of breaking the biggest story in galactic history. You are trending again, Silas said, tapping his datapad. The United Earth government has officially labeled Eli a terrorist and a symbol of alien corruption. The extremist factions are calling him the Puppet Man. They say you hollowed him out and are wearing him like a suit. Charming, Eli thought. I always wanted a nickname. And you, Lady Lysara, Silas continued, looking up at her. The council has stripped you of your titles. They have declared you excommunicado. Any loyal citizen is authorized to kill you on sight. They are calling you the traitor of blood. Lysara looked at her hands. Her fingernails were still stained with the memory of the fight on Helios Station. I have been called worse by my own family at dinner parties, she said dryly. Silas sat down on a crate, rubbing his eyes. It is not all bad. There are murals of you two going up in the slums, and they are painting you with 2 faces, one human, one Kylori. They are calling you the Coalescent. The proof. The proof, Lysara repeated. That we do not have to eat them, Eli said, speaking aloud through her mouth. His tone was rougher, his cadence distinct. That we can be something else. Vera bustled into the room, carrying a tray of nutrient paste and a soldering iron. She looked manic and cheerful, seemingly unbothered that she was now the most wanted scientist in 3 sectors. Eat, she ordered, shoving the tray at Lysara. Your metabolic synchronization is stabilizing, but you are burning calories like a fusion reactor. If you do not eat, Eli will start hallucinating cheeseburgers again, and it is very distracting for me when I am trying to calibrate the shields. It was 1 cheeseburger, Eli defended in the headspace, and it was a very specific craving. Lysara took the spoon. She could feel Eli's phantom hunger. But it was not the predatory starvation of the vampire anymore. It was a human hunger, a desire for comfort, for warmth, for sustenance. She ate the paste, imagining it was the cheeseburger he wanted, and felt a wave of gratitude from him that tasted like sunshine. "We need to talk about the future," Vera said, sitting down and pointing the soldering iron at them. "The old order is wounded, yes. Helios Station is gone. The matriarch is in a coma. The general is missing, but the system is vast. It will not just roll over and die." "We know," Eli thought. "The snake is thrashing. Splinter factions are rising," Vera explained. "On Earth, the human purity groups are arming themselves, claiming all aliens are parasites. On Xylos Prime, the traditionalist houses are gathering their fleets, claiming humanity is a cancer that needs to be cut out. They are using your story, but they are twisting it. They say you are the warning of what happens when the bloodlines mix." Lysara set the bowl down. "They want to turn us into a horror story," she said softly. "So we write a better ending," Eli said, later that night when the station dimmed to its sleep cycle. Lysara retreated to the only place where she could truly be alone, or as alone as she ever would be again. She sat on the floor of the observation deck, looking out at the asteroid field. But her consciousness drifted inward, pulling Eli with her. They entered the mindscape. It had changed since the chaotic days of their training. The landscape was no longer a jagged collision of neon slums and obsidian temples. It had settled. It was now a twilight garden, a fusion of Earth's overgrown ruins and the bioluminescent flora of Xylos. Vines of glowing blue ivy wrapped around rusted steel beams. A stream of clear water flowed over black geometric stones. It was peaceful. It was them. Lysara stood on a bridge made of woven light. Eli was leaning against the railing, watching the water. He looked healthy here. No scars, no exhaustion. Just the man he might have been if the war hadn't broken him. "We survived," Eli said, looking at her. "We did," Lysara answered. She walked over to him. In the physical world, she was sitting alone in the dark. Here, she could feel the heat radiating off him. "I have been thinking," Eli said, turning to face her, "about what the general said, that I was trash, that I was disposable." Lysara felt a flash of anger, sharp and protective. "He was wrong. I know," Eli said, "but for a long time, I believed him. I thought my life was just a series of accidents waiting to end. And then I woke up inside you." He reached out and touched her face. His fingers were warm. "You gave me value. Lys, you fought for me. In the data core, when you could have let me go, when you could have saved yourself, you jumped into the dark for me. I would do it again," Lysara whispered. 1,000 times. "I know," Eli said. "And that is what scares me." He looked deep into her fractal eyes. "We are never going to be normal, are we? I am never going to have my own body back. You are never going to have privacy. Every thought I have, you hear. Every time you feel sad, I ache. We are stuck." Lysara took his hand, interlacing their fingers. "Stuck is the wrong word," she said. She stepped closer, closing the gap between them. "Do you remember what my aunt said? That power without accountability creates monsters?" "Yeah. We are the accountability. Eli, you keep me from becoming a predator. I keep you from becoming a ghost. We are not stuck. We are anchored." Eli let out a breath he didn't really need. "An anchor," he mused. "I like that." He paused, his expression turning serious. "But it is more than that, isn't it? It is not just survival anymore, at least not for me." Lysara felt his heart rate increase, both the one in the dream and the one in her chest. She felt the wall of his insecurity crumbling. revealing the raw, tender thing beneath. "I love you," Eli said. The words hung in the air, heavier than any planet. "And not just because you are the only person I talk to. I love the way you try to hide your laugh. I love that you pretend to hate human food but secretly like the salt. I love that you are terrifying and gentle all at once." Lysara felt tears prick her eyes. She had heard flowery declarations from suitors for centuries, poems about her beauty, her status, her bloodline. None of them had ever sounded like this. None of them had known her. Eli knew everything. He saw the ugly parts, the violent urges, the fear, the arrogance, and he stayed. "I love you too," she whispered. "I never thought I would say that to a human. I never thought I would say that to anyone. But I look at the future, Eli, and the only thing that makes it bearable is that you are there." "Then let's stop being afraid of it," Eli said. He pulled her into an embrace. It was not like a human kiss, and it was not like a Kylori ritual. It was a convergence. As their lips met in the mindscape, the barrier between them dissolved completely. It was a sensation of absolute unmaking. Lysara felt herself pouring into him, her memories of starlight and cold stone mixing with his memories of rain and neon. She felt his childhood, the grit of the sector, the hunger, the fear. He felt her centuries, the loneliness of the court, the cold weight of expectation, the silence. It was overwhelming when it was a crescendo of sensation that had no physical equivalent. It was the feeling of being utterly, completely seen. There were no secrets, no shadows to hide in. Every scar was touched, every fear was held, every desire was answered. It was a terrifying loss of control. And yet, it was the safest moment of their lives. They breathed each other in. They shared a single heartbeat. For a timeless moment, there was no Lysara, no Eli. There was only the coalescent, a being of light and shadow, suspended in a universe of their own making. When they finally pulled apart, the garden around them was blooming with colors that did not exist in the real world. Shimmering golds and deep, velvet purples. Lysara rested her forehead against his. She felt dizzy, drunk on the intimacy of it. "Wow," Eli breathed, his voice sounding dazed. "That was better than a cheeseburger," Lysara teased gently. "Let's not get carried away," Eli quipped, but the love radiating from him was bright enough to blind a star. "But yeah, close. Really close." They stood there for a long time, just holding each other, accepting the truth of their existence. They were one. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a curse. It felt like a gift. The next morning, the physical world returned with a demand for coffee. Lysara woke up in her cot, stretching her limbs. She felt Eli waking up with her, a slow, warm unfurling in the back of her mind. Morning, sunshine, Eli thought. "My back hurts. Did we sleep funny?" "You slept in a ball," Lysara muttered, rubbing her spine. "I told you to stop curling up. I am too tall for that." "Old habits." Eli yawned. "Hey, pass me the water." Lysara reached for the canteen and took a drink. "Thanks," Eli said. "You know, it is wild. I am officially inside you in every possible way, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And yet, you still won't let me pick the breakfast playlist." Lysara rolled her eyes, but a smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "If I let you pick the music, we would be listening to trash metal from the 22nd century, she said. "It sounds like a blender eating a toolbox. It is called culture. Lys," Eli retorted. "You wouldn't understand. You guys listen to wind chimes and call it a symphony." The door hissed open, and Vera walked in, holding a data pad. She stopped, looking between them. You are glowing, she noted suspiciously. It is the hydration, Eli said quickly. It is the resonance, Vera corrected, smirking. Your biofields are perfectly synced. It is disgusting and impressive, but mostly disgusting. She threw the datapad onto the cot. We have a situation. Lysara picked up the pad. It displayed a star map of the outer rim. My intelligence network picked up a signal, Vera said, her voice turning serious. We thought the Hesperus project was destroyed when Helios Station fell, but the data wasn't just on the station. Backups, Eli guessed, his mood sobering instantly. Off-site storage, Vera confirmed. There is a facility on Frontier World 9, a bleak rock on the edge of the drift. Local reports say people are disappearing again, and strange ships have been seen in orbit. Ships with no markings. The general, Eli realized. He escaped. I saw his shuttle launch just before the station blew. He is trying to restart the program, Lysara said, her eyes narrowing. He wants to build his legion of slaves away from the eyes of the core worlds. Silas stepped into the doorway behind Vera. If we let him dig in, Silas warned, he will act. He will create an army of coalescents who are stripped of their minds. He will use them to take back the government. Lysara looked at Eli, not at him, but through herself, to where he resided in her soul. We cannot let that happen, Eli said. We have a responsibility. Lysara agreed. Silas looked at them. The resistance needs leaders. The people are asking for you. They want the coalescent to speak to the Senate. They want you to accept a position on the Transitional Council. You could be the rulers of the new age. Lysara stood up. She walked to the mirror on the wall, a piece of polished steel. She looked at her reflection. She saw the pale skin of a vampire, the scars of a soldier, and the eyes that held two souls. We are not rulers, she said softly. We are not politicians, Eli added, using her voice. Lysara turned to face them. Power corrupts, she said. We have seen it. My mother wanted to be a god. The general wanted to be a conqueror. If we take a crown, if we sit on a throne, we become part of the system. We become the thing we fought against. Then what will you do? Silas asked. We go to work, Eli said. We go to Frontier World 9. We find the labs. We burn them down. We will be the shadow that hunts the monsters, Lysara said. We will travel from world to world. We will expose the farms. We will free the stock. We will be the reminder that no one is disposable. Vera smiled, a sharp, dangerous expression. I was hoping you would say that. I took the liberty of upgrading your ship. The engines are faster. The stealth drive is military grade. And I installed a better coffee machine. I love this woman, Eli thought. The airlock of the Sanctuary of Dust cycled open, revealing the patched-up smuggler ship that had become their home. It looked battered, scarred by plasma fire and micrometeoroids, but it stood defiant against the stars. Lysara walked up the ramp, her boots clanging on the metal. She stopped at the top, looking back at the nebula that swirled in the distance, a cloud of purple and gold dust, the wreckage of stars that had died to create something new. She placed her hand against the cold glass of the airlock frame. You okay? Eli asked. I am afraid, she admitted. We are leaving the only safety we have. We are going back into the fire, and this time, they will be waiting for us. Yeah, Eli said. They will be. She felt him metaphorically stand beside her, looking out at the same void. You know, Eli mused. 6 months ago, I was lying in a gutter in Sector 4, looking up at the smog, begging the universe to just let it end. I wanted to die. Lys, I was so tired of fighting for nothing. Lysara felt the echo of that despair, a cold ghost in his memory. And now, Eli continued, his voice thick with emotion. Now I am fused with a beautiful alien vampire girl I love. I am the most wanted man in the galaxy. I have a bounty on my head that could buy a planet, and I am terrified. Why? Lysara asked. Because now I have something to lose, Eli said. I want to live. Lys, I want to see what happens next. I want to argue with you about music. I want to save those people. I want every second of this weird, messy, impossible second chance. Lysara smiled. It was a radiant, fierce smile that reached her eyes. Then let's use it well, she said aloud. She turned away from the void and walked into the ship. They moved through the corridors with the easy familiarity of two bodies that were one. They reached the cockpit. Lysara sat in the pilot's chair. Her hands moved over the controls, her fingers dancing with Eli's muscle memory. Shields up, Eli reported, checking the systems. Reactor is green. Nav computer is locked on Frontier World 9. Lysara gripped the throttle. We choose each other, she said, her voice echoing in the small cockpit. And we choose to fight for those who were not given a choice. Ready when you are, partner, Eli said. Lysara pushed the throttle forward. The engines roared, a sound like a waking dragon. The ship trembled, then surged forward, breaking the magnetic lock of the asteroid. They accelerated. The stars outside the viewport stretched, elongating into infinite lines of light. Inside the mindscape, on the bridge of woven light, Lysara and Eli stood hand in hand. They didn't look back. They looked forward into the chaotic, dangerous, beautiful unknown. Their heartbeat, a single powerful rhythm, echoed in the silence of space. Punch it, Eli said. Lysara smiled. She engaged the drive. The ship vanished in a flash of white fire, jumping into the stars, not as a conqueror, and not as a victim, but as a weapon of change.